Our next step in the process is I want to go ahead and make sure that this area is degreased, especially those threads. It looks like there could be a little bit of a residue still in there. You want to make sure it's absolutely clean. Before we start that, I want to point out, I'm not going to be using my good centers to do the spraying. What we're going to do, I'm going to go ahead and do this right now. I'm going to show you. Now I know we got this indicated, but we will recheck this after the shaft is cool from the spray welding. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this from the tailstock. And I'm going to show you the one that I always use. This is an old center. This was my dad's. You can see it's got the masking compound on the center there. This is just an old wore out center, but it's actually still good. There's nothing wrong with it. You can see weld spatter on there. So my suggestion is that anytime you're doing any kind of heating, welding, spray welding, anything on the lathe, and you're getting close to the center there with the heat, have an old, an old dedicated center that you're not concerned about tearing up or ruining. And that's all this is used for, is just to hold this, and it's not going to affect it. So just a little tip for you: keep an old center around that you can trash, and you're not concerned about messing up your really expensive high-dollar centers. All right, so we got that in there. I'm just going to use this stuff right here, this super degreaser from CRC. And I just want to, this is a really quick drying one. And this Super Degreaser Plus is the non-chlorinated. It doesn't have a flash point or anything. Doesn't leave a residue. I just want to make sure that there's no grease or oil down inside those threads and any area around where we're going to be spraying. You don't want anything to get hot, and when this is rotating, you know, happen to sling up and then fall right back down on the area that you're going to be spraying at, because that's that'll be kind of detrimental to your buildup, and you'll have to start over again. So that looks like it's pretty good. Should be nice and clean. So we want to do this over onto the other shaft in the Monarch as well. All right, same thing over here on the Monarch. So what I have done, this center right here, I actually haven't used it for spray welding yet, but I haven't used this center in years. It's still good, but you see how wore out the center tip is? It's in rough shape, so this is not one that I would reuse. It really needs to be reground. But this isn't one that I'm going to be using really anymore. So this is going to end up being sacrificed to use for spray welding and welding from now on. All right. Go ahead and make sure it's clean too, using the same stuff as I used before. Just make sure all the grease and oil is off of this thing. I'm going to go ahead and get the part masked now. And what I want to do, I'm just going to use the Sharpie here. I want to make a mark right there. That's the top of that taper. I want to make sure I don't go past that right there whenever I'm doing my undercut. And then so there's the line of where we're going to be turning to. I want to go just past that, right about there. That gives me a reference of something to look at as I'm applying the masking. This is the masking compound here, solution 103 from Eutectic. Always give it a good shake. I'm just going to use an acid brush. What I meant by that Sharpie mark is whenever I'm undercutting the shaft that when we have to undercut it, sometimes whenever you mask this, you'll mask over marks like that, and it's really hard to tell how far you should actually turn it. So that gives me a reference where to go with the tool bit whenever we're doing our undercut there. That's really all we need. The powder is not going to try to stick back there at that area, but we don't want to make sure that we get plenty over here on the taper, and it shouldn't affect those threads either. That's when you're that far away from where you're going to be spraying. It's not going to be building up over there. So we'll just end up wire brushing those threads. Help speed up the drying of the masking, I'm just going to use this Burns-O-Matic propane torch. It'll help dry that moisture out of that masking a lot faster than just waiting for it to dry. All right, to give the threads in the center up here a little bit of extra protection, I'm going in with this Weld Aid. This is a nozzle spray right there for welding tips, MIG guns, things like that. Just going to put a little bit right there on the threads, put a little bit there on the center. It's just a more of an over precaution thing. It's not going to really need it, but it will help the dust particles that are going to be shooting that way. They should just brush right off at that point. I've got a carbide tool in there, style D, 90-degree tool. We'll go ahead and do our undercut now. We'll just be undercutting it 20 thousandths. So once I get my touch off here, I'm going to run in here and touch it and set my collar to 0. There's our 0 point. Let's go in 10 and see how it does. Backing it up just a little bit here. Cutting like it's cast iron. Just backing into my mark. It should be right at the end of that taper. Yeah, definitely cast iron. That is the end of our wear mark, so I'm going to keep it going over just a little past that, right into our Sharpie mark, just like that right there. We'll go ahead and come back. I'm going to slow the feed rate down this time. This cast iron, I don't have to worry about it making a nice chip. Let's go in another 10 thousandths, 20 thousandths total. All right, we'll make this pass down and then we'll put our thread on there. All right, there's our undercut. So let's go ahead and get our thread on there now. Got our threading tool in there. That is the Tungaloy Tetra Mini Cut we're using. It's always good practice. I take that degreaser that I showed you and I spray the end of this tool off and then blow with the air. Just make sure there's no oil on this tool or in this insert that's going to transfer over onto your surface. I've got the machine set at a 24 pitch thread. That's a good range to do this scratch pass thread on there. And on this machine, I can just engage it anywhere I want if I want to go back and do another cut. So another reason why I picked 24. I'm just going to come in here until it touches. That's 10 thousandths. And then we'll go ahead and we'll engage it. I'm going to come back and do it again, another 10 thousandths depth on there. Can't see the tool, so take my air and move it out of the way just like that. Move those chips out of the way. Back into our start. Make sure you retract the tool before you cut into that shoulder there. So that is our undercut. It is ready to go now. Always be sure, don't come up there with your hand and touch it. Don't let your coworkers come around and put their hands on it, because everybody always wants to touch that and see what it feels like. You're going to transfer the oil off of your fingers onto that if you touch it. So just leave it alone. Just take a little bit of air and blow it off. Make sure there's no dust particles left on there. And if you do have any, if you have any burrs from the turning or threading, just take you a file and take you a smooth file like this, but make sure it's clean. So degrease it first, and then use that to knock those burrs off the threads if you need to. All right, we're on the Monarch, so let's go ahead and get our undercut done on this one.